right. I accidentally hit record, so I'm just going to start. This is a challenge that I gave myself out of like an idea that came out of nowhere. I've been having this elongated conversation with a thread in ChatGPT that is like my own personal thought bubble of business development. And I suddenly asked it, I was like, so I'm going to have you prompt me every day based on everything that we've been working on, like one topic to do a quick video on that I'm just going to post to YouTube and not think about it. I'm Stephen Levitt, and I am the founder of I Create Sound. I'm a music producer, and recently I started calling myself a creative, which I know I'm not going to knock it because it's accurate. I am a polymath and I do a lot of different things. What I'm here to talk to you about today, if I can vaguely remember the prompt that came up, was how to balance creativity and getting things done. And I know this is a topic that a lot of people can relate to. As a music producer, my job is to help people like realize their vision. But often when it comes to dealing with my own projects and things, I find myself pulled in a million different directions, and it's become a discipline as I try again to get better at the doing and the consistency part, which is something that I as a like abstract thinker, like putting all these various pieces together, I feel like, I struggle to, some people are just atomic habits, like nothing, just super second nature to them, right? I have learned to appreciate the work in progress. So obviously I'm in this room, this beautiful room with a beautiful piano that came from my house. My wall's not painted. And that's like, it's like I can just somehow exist in this world where certain key things aren't done, and it's like, am I going to let myself not start this YouTube channel because my wall's not painted? No, I'm not. I'm going to go for it. Here's what I've learned, right? So there's a tension between the part like that you need when you're running business and doing financials and things like that, that checks the boxes and that gets the things done. And there's always a tension between like the freedom that you need to go anywhere, do anything, create, imagine anything. And a lot of times the disconnect is your dream, it's so dreamy that it's not practical and things don't actually happen. So I have a client recently who is a weekend warrior, and he was really inspired by, it was a cool story aside, by an album that we did 12 years ago, made him pick up the bass guitar again. And he's just been like on his computer, very tediously learning Logic on his own. And he's written these really amazing songs. And he finally decided to reach out to me and be like, hey, Steve, I want to produce this EP and I need help. Like, I don't know how to do this. I've never done it before. And so he reached out to me because I've made a lot of records. And so I know how to take the vision or the idea, and I know the steps it takes to boil it down. And a lot of times that takes experience. And oftentimes when we're entrepreneurs or creatives and we're doing something that's never been done before, part of the challenge, or even making a record, right? Part of the challenge is you've never done this record before. So you don't know what the creative steps are going to be that you're going to have to do. And that's where it's easy to get lost when it comes to actually making things happen. And so the other day I was talking to a colleague about this project I want to do, which is kind of like a way to think about creative rhythms in a way that's not so like, artificial, like this has to be done by the 5th, or like it's more flexible and it's more like to get in tune with your own rhythm. So it's not have to, I'm excited to. And one of the things that was coming up was every time we looked at, the feeling of how making something happen that could make money and that, had the practical stuff, it put so much pressure on the being part, the spontaneous, the like what I would call like the flowy part, and it crimped the flow. And at times I've seen artists do this in music where you're so worried about the clock, like what you're paying per hour, that you can't let yourself relax enough to get a good take. And you may do that take 100 times, but you might not actually get what you're going for ever. And it qualitatively, I mean, yeah, sure, you get it done, but qualitatively, like everyone kind of goes, passes it over, goes, they don't resonate with it. And, every artist who you've read about who's a major artist that moves people knows how to get into a space where they are like, they get out of the way. They let all of that go. And they're just in the now, and they're just present. And obviously, if you run a business, if you have a band, if you're a musician, if you have bills to pay and deadlines to meet and an album release coming out, there are all these things that sort of like pile up, and they're all very left brain thing. I mean, if you're the kind of person who likes to check off to-do lists, I mean, some people really like that. I mean, that could be really fun. But it's easy to lose track of why you're really doing it. And it's also really easy to lose track of like, is this really good? Is this really, am I happy with this? And often to know like what makes me happy or unhappy with this. And sometimes to do that, you really have to sit with things, and you really have to allow that to, you give it space. And I think that idea of the space to let something be in process, to let something be undefined, to let something be unknown, to let, there's an answer out there. I don't have it right now, but it exists, and I'm going to just allow it to be until it makes itself apparent. I think that's a big part of the creative process. And I tell you, I got a notebook full of ideas of things that, I just write them down. I have things, I may never do, but I just write them down because, when you're in that mode of the creative ideas, I'll go revisit those 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, and then find, oh, now I have all the pieces in motion to do that thing that I've always wanted to do. And I tell you what, I've stopped limiting myself in terms of the, what things are possible. Like, what things is it that I'm going to do or can do in, I can't do that. I'm just a music producer, and this is outside of my field, no, like, embrace the all creativeness of it all. Like, sometimes, like for me, it was starting a podcast. When I started the Language of Creativity podcast, I was procrastinating from getting some editing done on some guitars for a record that did get done. And, I actually had my client do the podcast with me. So it's not like he had a problem with it, but it was brilliant. And it was the best creative diversion I could have thought of. And that was one of the things I just, when I was thumbing through the book by Rick Rubin about creativity, he said that, it was like, there's really no, procrastination is not a thing, like at least in that way. Like, there are creative diversions that are very positive. And so instead of fighting yourself, instead of trying to be like, I am not measuring up to the performance standards and, my giving myself a terrible performance review, that is never going to get you where you want to go. But ironically, the flip side of that is like connecting with someone who has or who does, or reading something about someone who has or does, at times can like put you in that like mindset to get something that like is the key to the puzzle. Sometimes it's like we don't know the next step, and we suddenly we find the key that unlocks the door to our way forward, our creative inspiration or a spark, right? But to find that, it takes a willingness to let go. So this is about to be 10 minutes. I don't know how long YouTube is going to let me upload. So if you like my channel, like, subscribe, and tell me if you want me to do this more. All right. Talk to you later.